Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Welcome to the Vox podcast here at Election Central in Columbus, Ohio, the heart of everything, and from Northern California, Auburn, a suburb of what? What is Auburn a suburb of? Anything?
I don't know. I guess
how far?
Roseville via Sacramento, like 30 minutes from Sacramento.
All right, we'll call it a suburb-ish of Sacramento.
Suburbish.
Yes, these are the election hotspots, and so welcome to the show. We are in the middle.
Everyone's been waiting on pins and needles for Auburn's voice in this.
Yes. Well, friends, needless to say, we're recording this on Friday, November 6th, which feels like the third day of Tuesday, or the fourth day of Tuesday. No, the third day of Tuesday.
Just the way you phrase that whole thing feels appropriate.
Yeah. Well, I saw somebody say, from the year that brought you 6 months of April comes 3 days of Election Tuesday.
There's been really good Groundhog's Day memes going around too, of Bill Murray just being like, "It's Election Day again."
And for Calvinists, every day is Election Day, but that's an inside theological joke. Now, so maybe when we release this on Monday, we will have some concept of where this sucker's going. As it stands at the moment we're recording, things are leaning Biden's direction. But we, like with everything this year, it will be chaos right up to the last minute. So, we were joking off air that it's been tough to focus on much this week. I think for a whole heck of a lot of us, hitting refresh over and over and over again has not sped things along, which is very disappointing. Because I always think,
and I don't feel refreshed. That's the worst part.
Well, I mean, it works with elevators, right? If you press the button a lot, it works, or stop signals, right? Of course not, but it somehow makes me feel better. So we want to do a couple of things today. Number one, we want to thank two of our new Patreon members. We want to thank Dara, and we want to thank Jacob for coming on board this week. And as always, we're super grateful for the support. The podcast is a major part of what we think we're supposed to be about in life these days, and so it's very encouraging that people continue to join our team and help us produce this. So thank you for that. If you want to find out more, go to patreon.com and type in Vox Podcast with Mike Erie. You could type in Tim Stafford, but I don't know. I actually don't know what you would get if you type in Tim Stafford. Tim, do you have anything?
I don't, but I'm curious now.
Yes, probably probably Tim Stafford creating English syllabi for college students.
There are two other Tim Staffords out there that I have been confused with more than once. One was the guy that wrote all the books he's a Christian author that wrote a bunch of books on love in the 90s.
Wow.
And then there's a really froey hair, mustache, like folk guitar player. When my record went on Spotify or on iTunes, we had some discrepancies. Not between the two of us. We found each other and became friends, but his fans were not excited about my music when they bought it. Oh,
come on.
They're like, "What is this?"
That's marketing genius is what that is.
Yeah.
That's why we're Vox. So anyway, you can check all of that out. We want to talk just a little bit about the experience this week for people of faith in the midst of the chaos that is happening, and then of course we're going to dive back into the Sermon on the Mount. So I observed, Timothy, John, an interesting dynamic at play. On Election Tuesday, there were a whole bunch of us, myself included, trying to just, say basic sort of theological considerations about this is a great time to be practicing the upside down kingdom. Aslan is still on the move. That's my favorite one. which is in the kingdom still advancing. But I saw as I kind of engaged in social media, I saw I don't know, a relatively high degree of pushback to any like theological language like that. Now, for reasons we've talked about before, the whole God is in control line, we're not big fans of. It's unhelpful at best, and may not be true in the way that we think it's true at worst. But I kind of have always, Jesus is on the throne. I always thought that was kind of okay. But there were a large number of more progressive folks objecting to that sentiment. And I thought that was interesting. I just thought that was interesting. So I came across this right here. Somebody said, as a pastor, I want to encourage folks to avoid toxic theology today and every day. Quote, no matter what happens, Jesus is king, unquote, is a form of faith that invalidates the lived experiences of faithful people all over the country who have been harmed by this administration. So toxic theology is identified with the phrase, no matter what happens, Jesus is king, at least in this instance. And then there was another one. And this represents, I don't know, maybe a dozen or more that I saw. We know that Jesus is still on the throne. Oh, no, dear American pastors, we know that Jesus is still on the throne. We don't need you to tell us that. It's dismissive and patronizing and theologically manipulative. Jesus was on the throne during the rise of many evil men. Don't distract from what's happening with platitudes. See also, God is still in control. We just need more Jesus, and anything else that sounds like a chorus of a worship song that you're going to use to spiritually thump people for feeling real grief about the state of our country. So, and I've seen this sentiment called toxic positivity, which I didn't know was a phrase, but it's probably true, and spiritual bypassing. All right, which, my goodness, they're so my lexicon for this stuff needs expanding pretty rapidly. But I think here's what I hear in this, in this concern, and I don't know if this is worth much of a conversation, but so I hear first that phrase can be used in a way that's very dismissive of people's felt reality. So I'm upset, I'm lamenting, I've experienced injustice, I'm angry, and this is just an over-spiritualized way of saying calm down, right? Or don't be anxious, or whatever, right? Jesus is on the throne, it'll be fine. And I can see that. I can certainly see it being used in that way, right? When, as someone who has a bit of an anxiety disorder, when somebody just tells me don't worry, it's not super helpful. And it feels dismissive sometimes. Now, I can overplay that, but I generally see, okay, so the phrase God is on the throne or Jesus is Lord, that's the phrase I was using. It's dismissive of people's realities. All right. Secondly, it promotes inaction, right? So it's just, and this is particularly true of the whole phrase God is in control, right? Because if by God is in control, we mean that God is accomplishing his will in everything that's going on, like he's causing it, then of course we should be passive. And so I totally think that critique is valid. The whole Jesus is Lord thing, I see where that could be understood in a similar way. That, hey, guys, Jesus is Lord, and we can just mean by that, so just accept whatever's going on. Right? Whatever's going on is Jesus is Lord, and it's fine. And then I also see this being objected to as a platitude of the privileged. Right? Mm-hmm. Easy for you to say Jesus is Lord when you're not, affected by the injustice of the world. Make sense?
Yeah.
So I think I can see why people would object to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which
I definitely don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think that's the thing is like Jesus is Lord doesn't also mean that that things are not really difficult, right? Like, it's like you either pick one or the other. Like, Jesus is not there, or Jesus is totally in control and everything is by his hand. But
Well, so let's first off, exactly right, Tim. Let's first off admit that phrase can be used in all of the ways people are sensitive to.
absolutely.
So yes, just as like the phrase "I love you" can be misused by an abuser. Absolutely.
Yes.
So yes, that's true. But I also wonder if these objections miss what the phrase actually is getting at, and is more of a result of the way it's been caricatured rather than, because who were the first people to say this? I mean, it wasn't privileged people announcing Jesus as Lord in the Roman Empire, right? The first people announcing Jesus as Lord were the scum of the earth, right? These were the leftovers and the cast-offs. There were a few rich and noble people involved in this, but early on, this was slaves and this was women, and this was like low-wage workers, day laborers. I mean, this was not the cream of the crop, acknowledging that Jesus was Lord. It was the cry. It's always been the cry of a marginalized people, right? And certainly, how was Jesus' lordship displayed? Well, he was a political. He was deemed a political terrorist, and he was crucified by the majority culture of the time.
Yeah.
So I get how it can be co-opted as a whitewashing whatever, but the phrase Jesus is Lord is actually the ground of all resistance, right? That instead of promoting an action, what I see it doing is it actually funnels and fuels resistance into a cross-shaped lens, right? And so, because here's what I hear. I hear, when we're talking about Sermon on the Mount, I hear people say, well, okay, it's just so unrealistic. You know, this turning the cheek and this not resisting evil. And and they'll say something like, this is not the way the world works. To which my response is, that's exactly the point. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes. This is not another.
So you do get it.
Yeah, exactly. This is not another version of the way the world works. This is a radically reconfiguring of the way the world works. So yes, if you deem it impractical in this world, exactly. Because practicality in the kingdom is no longer the greatest value.
Yeah.
Right? So I hear that when we talk about Sermon on the Mount. I also hear, well, the Sermon on the Mount is, and as expressed in the critique of this Jesus is Lord, it's just this privileged thing. And I'm like, man, who are the people Jesus was talking to about carrying an extra mile? I mean, these are people being oppressed, right? You cannot, I mean, the phrase itself, Jesus is Lord, of course it can be used badly, but it's actually the most important theological phrase we can be trusting in. It means that all injustice will ultimately be dealt with. The phrase Jesus is Lord means Jesus is king and Jesus is judge. And his wrath in the Bible is actually good news. It means everything will be put back to the way it was intended to be. That God sees every bit of injustice and that will be remedied. Right? That's what the phrase Jesus is Lord means.
I guess for me, it's the inactivity that comes with it. Like, Jesus is Lord did inspire, like, participation in it, and inspired people to be involved. It inspired, like, you to be part of living under that lordship, being part of that kingdom. I think now sometimes that phrase gets used, and there's it's like a bunch of people that say, like, everyone needs to exercise, but they never leave their house, and they just binge watch TV. But they profess and they believe that exercising is super healthy,
right?
But they don't do anything with it. So I see people who are marginalized, who have been hurt maybe by the current administration or by something, when a bunch of people just say, hey, Jesus is Lord, they say, well, there's no activity that's helping me. Like when you wrote Aslan is on the Move, I love that picture because that section of that book, like, there was a rallying of people under the idea of what Aslan was doing.
Mm-hmm.
They were building an army that had no hope of winning that battle.
Yeah.
But they're just like, no, did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? And it inspired like this confidence and this participation in all the people. And I think that now sometimes that phrase just gets used as an umbrella term, and we just lose.
Yeah.
If there's no activity, if your kids are being deported from cages to other countries, and you just hear people saying, "Don't worry, Jesus is Lord," it's like, great. I lost my children.
Yes.
So, and there's a big chasm between those two things.
Yes. So here we are again. Well, here we are again at the Sermon on the Mount, because Jesus himself will say, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not do impressive work in your name? And I will say, depart from me, I never knew you. So here we go with the same bifurcation, great word, between people who use the religious language of the scriptures as a club, and people who can still be capable of that, but try to inhabit this language as a reality that, instead of passivity, actually fuels all the agitating and loving and serving and blessing that we can manage, because we know the shape of where the universe is going. We know exactly what the universe looks like, and it looks like God on a cross. And so Jesus is Lord. What kind of Lord are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the crucified Lord, whose crucifixion was such foolishness in the first century and still is today, right? In the way of power, in the way of shininess, in the way of self-promotion. Jesus is Lord is like, for me. So I guess I don't want to give up on that phrase yet. There's some phrases I think we need to give up on. But and I don't know that I'm an accurate judge of which of those should be. I guess I was just like, I can see where people hear the Jesus is Lord thing as just a cliche. For me, it is the ground of being. It is what fuels every bit of involvement in the world. Is that I know how.
I think that's what it's missing. It's like Jesus is Lord, so I'm doing this.
Yes.
Instead of just Jesus is Lord, period. Good luck.
Yes. Well, it's so funny. I mean, Paul is a great example of this. So Paul's most majestic description of Jesus as risen is in 1 Corinthians 15. And he's going on and on. It's like 50 some verses about resurrected bodies and spiritual bodies and natural mortal bodies. And if we're raised this, then we're this and we're not that. And it's so confusing. And he ends on this, note of death, where is your sting and your victory? And then, again, they didn't have chapter divisions. And then it's instantly into, now, about the collection for the poor. And there's no deviation between the theology he just outlined about the resurrected Jesus and the way it is that we're to take care of each other. And what's happened, and the reason I wanted to get into this is this reveals what the truncated way that a lot of our tribe has understood what it means to affirm that Jesus is Lord and how it is that we live, right? And what the Sermon on the Mount does is it just says over and over and over, Jesus is not Lord unless you live this way. Living this way is what it means to say Jesus is Lord.
Yeah.
It's a completely upside down thing. And if you don't live this way, I mean, Jesus will say in another gospel, why do you call me Lord and not do what I say?
Yeah.
I mean, end of story. So I don't want to give up on that phrase, because for me it is the ultimate subversive. Because implied in it when it was first uttered is Caesar is not, Pharaoh is not.
Yeah.
Right. No matter how bad the oppression was, they're not the ultimate reality.
Just needs to be reclaimed.
Yes. And so is that what we need to do with all of the old cliches? I don't know if that's the answer. But I was just thinking about, it really got me thinking, because there was a great article or a short article, I think it was in the Atlantic, but it was just about how there are two Americans and these two Americas don't understand or talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Right? So we've got almost 70 million people on each side of these two Americas. right? And from from so many of my well, I won't describe the labels, but on one side of the issue, there are all of these people like, how could that many people vote for this kind of person? And there's only one answer, it's racism. And then from the other side, it's, oh, there's fraud and there's stealing and there's corruption and blah, blah, blah. And then you have all of these people starting to beat up on anybody who wants to try to make peace. Right? Anything that's not an out and out outrage against the other side is considered some sort of complicity. And it's so interesting because the Sermon on the Mount does not ever give us the right to write off other image bearers. It just doesn't. And so what's going to fix this isn't going to be our social media channels and our wokeness or our political correctness or our whatever. What's gonna change this are the dinner tables around which we sit and our ability as Jesus followers to actually sit and love and bless people that we really disagree with.
Yeah.
You know? So this stuff could not be more timely. Unfortunately. nor could it not be more difficult.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? I see the wheels turning over there.
No, I think that's totally it. Ever since you guys started the Vox Community Church, I think on those podcast episodes, the push to have Eucharist centered or table fellowship center, the great equalizer of people sitting at a table together, the fact that Jesus was almost always coming from, going to, or at a dinner.
Yeah.
It's just, and then it makes me just think of the peacemaking versus peacekeeping, and peacemaking is work. Like you're going in there and you're trying to change things to make peace.
Yeah.
Rather than just trying to keep the status quo. So I think we are called, I think that is what Jesus as Lord means, is going out there and be peacemakers and be a change and get your hands super dirty. If you don't have dirt on your fingernails, something's missing.
Yeah. Your fingernails probably.
Yeah, maybe.
But yes, no, totally. And that, I guess that's the major pushback, is Jesus as Lord was never a call for inaction. This was a call for cross-shaped resistance. Always.
And it's kind of become like a chill out.
Yes.
It's a call for inaction.
Yes.
Chill out. Jesus is Lord.
Jesus has this. And you're like, well, in an ultimate sense, yes. But the call, the call for Jesus is Lord is it's the grounding for a Christian's ability to trust that Jesus' way actually works. To trust. So how can you refuse the temptation to grab political power or coercive power or violence? The only way you believe and can refuse that siren song is to believe the world doesn't work that way anymore. Something happened that changed the way the world works. There's a different way of keeping score. And so that the crucifixion of Jesus wasn't just achieving for me my individual salvation, but it was actually remaking the moral equation of the universe, right? That even though many disagreed with Rob's book, the title "Love Wins" is actually true. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, yes, Jesus. This is going to have a satisfactory conclusion. Or as Dallas Willard, we had someone post on our Facebook page, the kingdom of God is never in trouble. And so those things are true, but what they did to the imaginations of the earliest churches, it allowed them to not have to grab a hold of the ways of changing culture that were available to them, namely violent overthrow, right? That violent action. And so to say that Jesus is Lord is to say that his way wins.
It's interesting, though, because that idea, like the kingdom of God is never in trouble, or however it was worded.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes, I don't think that's incorrect, but the rhetoric of that I feel like it has made people really lazy over generations because they're just like, oh, we're on the winning team, so
Yeah, we're all good.
close your doors and close your windows. We'll just ride this wave to the shore, and
Right.
Did you guys make it? No. Well,
sorry.
The ocean's tough.
Yeah. But we'll write a song about oceans. Oh,
Hold
snap!
on to the thread.
Oh, snap! Yes. No. And really, bro, it's the whole gospel as American Christians have received it that promotes this inactivity. So it's the whole freaking package that has done this. You cannot read the book of Acts and somehow come away from with reading that book thinking that proclaiming the gospel and embodying the gospel are two different things.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
For them, the proclamation of Jesus' lordship meant they had everything in common. And they cared about the poor. And they provided alternative social services to what's the bread and circus that Caesar would provide. That's what it meant for them to say he was Lord. It wasn't just, here's what happens when we die. It's everything to do with, here's how we live now.
Yeah.
So, yes, that has to be recaptured. That has to be recaptured. To me, Jesus is Lord is the recognition that every human kingdom, no matter how much good it may do, will never, ever, ever embody what it is that Christ has done and is doing in the world. Right? It relativizes all other allegiances, even to the political parties we like or prefer. Right? It calls the whole human enterprise into question. And it gives us, it invites us to have a different kind of imagination. So all that is to say, we didn't have to go that was half an hour we just did on that. Batman.
Well, it's there's a lot going on.
There's a lot happening. Okay, so today, moving on, Sermon on the Mount. We are going to deal with a topic that Tim has already touched on. It is the topic of note in Christian circles in cultural circles about Christianity. And this is, we're going to stumble on, there are two things that Jesus says very clearly, exile you from the kingdom. Two, self-righteousness and hypocrisy, and they're related. These are the two things that Jesus' love, as ferocious as it is, and his non-ever giving up as it is, cannot overcome if you hang on to these things. So, Jesus is going to speak a word, my brothers and sisters, to me, and especially to Tim and his hypocrisy. And so anyway, buckle up. Laura is going to do our reading. And of course, she has the voice of an angel.
Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with the trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you.
Thank you, Laura. And if you want to read for us, let Tim know. Tim at voxpodcast.com. We'd love to have some other readers, just so it's not our two boring voices over and over and over on this thing. But we referenced 3 episodes ago, we referenced this general principle in chapter 6, verse 1. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others. And then here's the part, to be seen by them. Now, Jesus told us in chapter 5, when he looked at the poor in spirit and the merciful and the mourning and the peacekeepers, He said, let your light shine before people so that they may see your good deeds and give glory to your Father in heaven. And here he says, don't let your righteous acts be seen. Now, the difference between the two verses is the little phrase, in order to be seen. So the issue is not getting caught doing good things. The issue is doing good things in order to get caught. Right? Yeah. So, and we've also remarked a couple of times that righteousness was reduced to three practices: prayer, almsgiving, and fasting. And of those three, almsgiving was the most important, almost synonymous in the Pharisees' day. So Jesus is going to use those three examples. We've talked about this a couple of episodes ago to undercut. Again, he's showing what the greater righteousness of the kingdom looks like as opposed to the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees. So he's going to give three examples. We're going to look at two of them today, which is giving and fasting. And then the praying bit, we're going to spend some time on that one as its own thing, because there's a lot there that is going to raise a lot of questions for us. So
interesting.
Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others in order to be seen. So it's a question of motive. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Now, all of chapter 6 has to do with heavenly rewards and earthly rewards. And we've got to clarify, heaven and earth are not different timestamps. Earth is now and heaven is in the future. Heaven and earth have to do with different realms of authority that exist now. All right? So heavenly treasure isn't gold streets in heaven, and earthly treasure isn't just money. These are ways, Jewish ways of talking about prioritizing the things of this world versus prioritizing the things of the kingdom. All right? That's just summary. So your Father in heaven isn't your Father somewhere else. It's your Father who is reigning and ruling in the space that's not earth. All right? And this phrase of reward, if you do, you'll have no reward. And there's tons of debate about, well, what's that mean? Like when we do good stuff, we get rewarded. And the Bible doesn't actually shy away from saying that there are rewards. Now, obviously, the biggest thing it says is the reward of following Jesus is Jesus, right? And the reward of obedience is obedience. I mean, and for those of us who've lived in flagrant ways opposing the ways of Jesus, then we know that the punishment of sin is just often sin itself.
Right.
So that could be what he's saying, or there could be something more. We just don't know. But it's certainly a very Jewish thing to say that your Father, who is in the realm of the heavens right now, will reward you for doing what is right. That's a very Jewish way to put this. First example, giving. And Jesus, of course, assumes this is a fundamental Christian duty. This is not something that's optional for Jesus followers, right? So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, in order to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they've received their reward in full. Now, the phrase in full has to do with a receipt. When you've paid off something and no more is owed, you have paid in full. So the idea is, if it's the applause of other people that you want, literally that is all you will receive.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Nothing else. So Jesus says a couple of things that are super interesting. One, he uses the word hypocrite, and that's the word we're going to camp on for the next couple of episodes. Because until, and I've read this a couple of places, the claim that is made by some scholars is that until Jesus uses this word this way, it was a neutral word. It was not a bad word. It was not an insult or pejorative. A hypocrite was someone in Greek theater who wore a mask. All the actors were men, and so you would wear a mask to portray a character. That would be a different emotion, could be a different race, could be obviously a different gender. And Jesus grew up, I think it's 3 miles outside of Sepphoris, which was destroyed before Jesus was born, and there were thousands of Jews that were crucified. but was being rebuilt during Jesus' childhood, and perhaps his father as a tekton and Jesus as an apprentice would have gone up and worked there, and there was a massive Greek theater. So perhaps that's where Jesus borrows the word. Obviously, we're reading in the lines there. But hypocrite, for us, it's always meant this, but for Jesus' culture, this just meant one who wore masks. That there was a duality or a distinction between the person's real face and the face they wore in public. All right?
So up till this point, it was just known that that was like a way of pretending or acting, not in a negative or positive way.
That's right. A hypocrite was just an actor. And so it wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and to some degree, even though we don't wear masks, I mean, we know that when our best actors and actresses, there's a distinction between how they are and how they are playing, right? In a role.
Kind of like how we live on Instagram.
Well, we're going to get to that, my friend. Because though we don't blow trumpets anymore to announce our goodness and righteousness, we do plenty of other things, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So Jesus simply says that giving is a good thing, and giving to the needy is a good thing. But if you're doing it to impress other people with how generous you are, then their impression of you is all the reward you will receive.
Yeah.
So what Jesus does is he doesn't say, wait until your motive is perfect to give. Instead, what he does is he gives us a very practical way of giving, which is, to use a colloquialism, to not let your right hand know what your left hand's doing. Right? Which is just, insofar as you are able, do not announce this and practice it in secret. You know? And then again, here he's playing off the Father in heaven. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. So what's the problem with hypocrisy? The problem with hypocrisy is that the Father sees what is done in secret.
Right.
Right? Yep. And so if you're just a hypocrite to fool people, then the fooling of people is all that will happen.
Yeah.
It's so juicy. It's so juicy. It's just so good. So, now, of course, all of this can be abused. Of course. And so people have justified greed, saying, well, we can't tell anybody what's happened to the money because the right hand would know what the left hand's doing and blah, blah. I mean, of course, all this nonsense. But Jesus is just being very, very practical, right? He invites his followers to inhabit a new kind of rightness, but the temptation will be, instead of glorifying God, to glorify themselves as they do it. And he's just practically saying the new rightness that God's interested in is a rightness that actually protects people from the impression that you're not poor in spirit, or that you're not mourning, or that you're not merciful, right? Or that somehow you've arrived. So, and then your Father who sees in secret. And this idea of him seeing in secret is woven all throughout the passage. And then your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So many thoughts. Now we'll get to rewards later at the end of this section when he starts talking about treasure in heaven. So don't lay up treasure in heaven. So he's riffing on treasure and secret and reward for most of chapter 6, which is super cool. All right, so that's the giving example. The fasting example. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Literally, the Greek reads, they become unrecognizable in order to be recognized.
I like that.
Isn't that juicy? So they
become unrecognizable to be recognized.
Yes. They disfigure their faces in order to show they're involved in piety.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, so good. So this is ancient virtue signaling.
Right.
Because the Pharisees made a big deal of the fact that they fasted. The law only had a few required fasts, but they fasted twice a week. Right? They made a big deal of this. And then Jesus, of course, says, but when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face so it will not be obvious that you are fasting. but only to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so, so good. All right. So Jesus, and now again, prayer is in here, and praying in secret is in here. And so we're going to segment that out, though, because there's so many other things about prayer that we want to deal with. Because Jesus is going to say some like, ask and it will be given, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened. So we're going to jump into all that juicy kind of stuff.
Ay.
But for today, let's just talk about all of the ways we put on a good show.
Just you and I personally?
Oh, I have enough personally that we could fill several hours. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It is.
I know that about you.
Oh, you do, actually. Yes, you do. And so we want to, of course.
I feel like I should say that was a joke. I'm also referring to the fact that I have plenty of my own, just in case people are like, "Jeez, Tim."
Oh yeah, I think people normally recognize you as very self-righteous and self-centered.
I think so. So, in the spirit of this section of the Sermon on the Mount, I'm trying to purge my self-righteousness.
Exactly. Oh, and it's so funny. The early Christians, in a discipleship manual called the Didache, which was around 100 AD, they actually made sure that Christians, if they were going to fasted on the days the Pharisees didn't fast. So the Pharisees fasted Mondays and Thursdays on market days, and the early Christians were called to fast on Wednesdays and Fridays to distinguish
themselves. So the divisions begin.
Oh, indeed. All right, so there's so much here, and I think, Tim, what we want to do is we want to spend a couple of weeks on hypocrisy, because Jesus talks a ton about it. And it's more than just, hey, we all know we're hypocrites, guys, so Jesus is Lord. He's not, like, he has some things to say here, not only in the Sermon on the Mount, but in other places that, at least for me, I really need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Because the hypocrisy is so insidious that, because there's an intentional hypocrisy, right, which we're all capable of in virtue signaling or whatever. But then there's an unintentional hypocrisy where I just have blind spots. And even though my words, like I've talked myself into believing that I believe this, but if you were to look at my life.
That's what I was going to say. The intentional often just breeds into the unintentional.
Yes.
It's a gateway drug, as they used to say.
Yeah. As they used to say, not anymore in several states, but I mean, oh goodness. First of all, there is in Jesus' spirituality an impulse to not dress up the kingdom in external accolades, to let it lay bare in all of its weakness and fragility and smallness and slowness.
That's so interesting.
You know what I mean? It doesn't need help, and it doesn't need our pretending. And my Lord, if there couldn't be a more harsh word to be spoken against all of us, like myself, who love to count bigness and shininess and fog machines and awesomeness and this is great and this is life-changing, and Jesus has a PR firm, and here Jesus is simply announcing the kind of rightness that needs no one to appreciate it or applaud it in order for it to serve in the kingdom. I mean, my Lord. Because, I mean, think about how, and we've made this point many other places, but the kind of American Christianity that many of us have embraced encourages the mask wearing, right? Because everything's in a shiny red bow. You can't be depressed, pissed, angry. You can't be an addict. We have special ministries for those people. You can't be honest if you're working in a professional Christian environment, or you lose your job. I mean, there's just all sorts of structural issues that encourage the duality between who I am and how I act. And if you work in Christian circles, there's a financial incentive behind that.
Yeah.
Oh, so devastating. So Jesus' response is, if you have to make a show of it, it's not real.
Yeah.
We have a church in Columbus that continually announces that it's one of the fastest growing churches in the state or in the nation. And if you have to announce that, then your church is sick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it just speaks, and it speaks at my heart, because we all count. Everything's ranked. We're all numbered. And so, it's just such a brutal reality to kind of run headlong into this. If you Instagram your righteousness, you have lost your reward. You know what I mean? I mean,
well, it's
is
so
it
interesting
possible?
how much we want it. We want to be seen as pious, or we want to be seen as good.
Yes.
But it's the whole thing's so backwards. It's fascinating.
Listen to the dictionary definition of virtue signaling. The action or practice of publicly expressing opinions or sentiments intended to demonstrate one's good character or the moral correctness of one's position. So you can say, as long as you say the right things on social media, it doesn't matter if you live. You can say Black Lives Matter, right? But it's just a flip of the whole Jesus is Lord thing, right? I mean, you can virtue signal all freaking day. And the problem with social media is that the mob will tell you whether or not you virtue signaled correctly, and shame you or whatever, and no one cares whether or not you actually live in a way that's congruent with what you're signaling. So what you've described, Tim, is absolutely right. I can vote and not put an "I voted" sticker on. I can go on a missions trip and not take pictures of the poor people that I'm ministering to, right? I mean, come freaking on. So you wonder why it is that Jesus doesn't do his best work in America anymore. Well, it's just for this. We've fallen in love with groups of people who are not represented in the Beatitudes, and a kind of ministry that is not represented in the Sermon on the Mount. You know what I mean? So
yes,
it's
absolutely.
not shocking when I'm concerned with virtue signaling. And I mean me. I mean, like, I want to have opinions on everything that's coming down, and it's a discipline not to just have opinions, and to know, like, when is it okay to be prophetic and to teach and to model something, and when is it turned into just a self-absorbed expression of pride? And I don't know that I have that figured out yet.
Yeah.
I'm just knowing, if I'm going to err, I got to err on the side of shutting my yap before I do anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, all right. So there's one implication. Jesus doesn't need applause or marketing. How about that? He doesn't need our pretending.
When I was 19 or so, I worked at a big Christian bookstore, and well, this is irrelevant, I think.
Do it.
There was that version of presenting a more, like, I had to go out and label the CDs. You know, it's like, if your kid likes Smashing Pumpkins, they'll love this. Or if your kid loves this band, they'll love this. And I had parents come in and they'd ask, like, what, if my kid's into this music, what can I? I was like, well, you know, this is what I'm supposed to show you, but Smashing Pumpkins are way better. Like, if you want to get better music. But it was like creating they'd make the Reese's Pieces shirts, but it'd be Jesus Pieces or whatever, but it was Reese's font, and it was like creating this entire culture of presenting this idea, all these ideas in a manufactured way. It just I don't know why it reminded me of that, but it reminds me of just being in there, and like, it was, you had to present this version, but that was kind of where it ended.
Yeah.
Like, I can wear the Jesus Pieces, whatever that even means, shirt out into public and yeah, weird stuff. Sorry, that was a sidetrack.
No, that's it. That's how it gets manifest. Everything is safe for the family, sanitized and cleaned up. And I understand that sometimes it has to be, right? People are at different stages in their faith. You don't introduce them to everything at once in the same way we do with our kids, right? We are discerning. Got it. Absolutely. Absolutely. But there's an energy somehow that our witness to the world resides only in our strength and polish. And not in our brokenness and weakness. And Jesus, obviously dismantles this. But it doesn't matter to us. It does not matter when Jesus' brother, channels the Sermon on the Mount in the book of James, right? That's part 2, by the way, of the Sermon on the Mount. And he just says very simply, God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. Period. And you see that in the life of Jesus. You see it in his ministry. What disqualifies people? Jesus doesn't disqualify people, but it's self-righteousness and hypocrisy. That's what, right? Because we're always hypocrites to our betterment, right? We're always putting on a face to present ourselves as better than we are.
Yeah. Yep.
And so our judgment then just becomes an expression of that hypocrisy and self-righteousness. And Jesus, I hate him and I love him and he's so wonderful and he tortures me. Because there's just no wiggle room in this stuff. You know, it's
so funny though to look at it like from this version being like a bird's eye view of the conversation, just because we're sitting safely on microphones and talking about it, to look at like how ridiculous it looks to be fasting and going out and saying like, I'm so hungry, but I'm doing this to better the world for Jesus or whatever you're fasting on behalf of, but it looks so ridiculous from a bird's eye view of just like, what I wouldn't give for a Whopper right now. I don't know why a Whopper. That's a
well,
you're welcome, Burger King. If you exist still.
I just remember like there were all of these, and who knows if these were fake, but There were moments during June and July when the protests after George Floyd was murdered were in full swing, that people would Instagram other people Instagramming at these protests. They'd walk up to a protest, take a picture, and then walk away and drive off somewhere. And it was just a perfect parable for this exact kind of spirituality.
Yep.
And so what Jesus is going to say about prayer is God doesn't need your polish. He doesn't need your he doesn't need your goodness. He needs your honesty. That's it.
He doesn't need your hashtag.
Doesn't need your hashtag. It's okay. And the only way to work this out, and this is the last thing we'll say, at least until we talk about this next time, but the only way to work this out is in community. That's the only way you can be exposed in humble, gentle, gracious fashion to the blind spots we all have.
Yes.
And so, this requires, like you made a joke about knowing me. Well, that's actually one of the most life-giving things I've ever lived in, is that you and Bonnie and others have walked and lived and spoken truth and given grace. Like that's real. And so, there's such goodness in that sort of friendship, because this isn't something we just do with me and Jesus and a Bible in a room. This is like, Lord, I constantly need. I'm like a freeway in Ohio, constantly under construction. Right? There are places where the ride is smooth, and there's fresh tar, and it's been repaired. Yeah. And there are lots of potholes, and guess what? No matter how long I live, it will always be under construction to the great inconvenience of people who need to use it. Right? It's just true. And so for me, this is utterly liberating, because I don't want to be the kind of person who is after any reward other than becoming the kind of person that looks and acts like Jesus. I'm just compelled by him. I want to be like that. I don't want to need the applause. I don't want to need the external props and the validation and all of those sorts of things. I want to be the kind of man who does good for its own sake. And
well, I've always struggled with this, and it's always been a hard thing for me. Even working for the church, it was very hard for me. This idea of you take care of the poor. Is it because Jesus commanded that, or is it because the poor are in need? You know what I mean? Like,
or there's a third option.
What's that?
I need the poor to remind me of my own poverty. Poor? Yeah. It's not just not the poor are needy, it's that I'm needy.
Right. I've always struggled with, I think there is something to when you said the community thing, that's what made me think of that, is like healing and growth and all that kind of stuff in community. Like being an Enneagram 4 or 5, as I'm learning more about the Enneagram, because I have to, apparently.
If you're going to love Jesus.
Yes, I'm such a self-isolator because I'm just not. I'm an extreme introvert. I've lived a majority of the last decade thinking that I am at my safest and most healthy when I'm on my own, and have found that to be false. And so Jesus constantly pushing for community, God developing things through community. I think that is, I don't know. I love how much Jesus subtly ties these things back together. Like he's not just like, listen guys, do it this way, but he's just like, as he's weaving these things, you see the healing and community, and you see these things, and it brings back things from before, and he's just like, it proves itself because it's true and real in that way. Like he doesn't have to hammer and hand out a pamphlet that's like, just as a reminder, what I said back in verse 2 was this. You see, like it organically goes that way because that's just the natural way that it should go.
Yeah. Well, that's why Yep. No, I think that's so true. And what's beautiful is then you see Jesus in the rest of Matthew doing all of these things.
Oh yeah.
Like you just that's why I think Matthew puts this early. Like literally, it's after chapter 4, Jesus began to preach on the kingdom. Then, bam, here's what he preached on the kingdom, and then you just see him do that, right? So these aren't random stories about lepers and demon-possessed people and rich men and random Jews, right? This is him having total integrity towards because this is what it is to be human, to forgive, right? And to bless, to serve, so it's, as always, it's just a lot bigger than we were told, and and maybe every generation has to learn that itself. But
totally, I think that's totally true.
Yeah. And maybe it's just our turn to go, holy crap, this thing is amazing. And so much of the pushback against it isn't pushing back against it.
Yes.
It's pushing back against what we've done to it in our falseness, in our hypocrisy, in our woundings.
Man, totally. I think it's 100% every generation. I think this is such an organic, it's an exercise that everyone should be. It's like if my grandparents learned how to swim and then never taught any of us, but just assumed that we would all be really great swimmers.
Right.
And instead, when we get in the water, we just flail and fall.
And to try to find trusted guides who are older, but who have learned this lesson.
Yes.
Because it seems like for some, as they get older, the kingdom grows smaller. Jesus gets smaller. And there are a few for whom Jesus gets bigger. And those people, man, they're never without people who want to be with them. You know what I mean?
Brueggemann and...
absolutely. I mean, Brennan Manning was this way. Dallas Willard was this way.
Yeah, right? Curiosity that continues to grow.
Beth Moore.
Yeah, it's inspiring.
I mean, she's not old, but she's older than us. I'd put her up there for sure.
Yeah.
Ruth Graham. Yes. there are, but it's hard to find. N.T. Wright, there's some of these trusted guides who, in their magnanimity, give us a bit of a shortcut so that we don't have to do all the chiseling ourselves.
Yeah, when they have the whole, what was it, Reading Rainbow response to it too, where it's just like, don't take my word for it.
Yeah.
Like, go get in the book and find out, like, here's great information from what I've learned and what I've seen and what I'm still learning, but
yeah,
like, you go check it out.
And as I get older, and by older I mean in my late 20s, I want to be that kind of person.
Me too.
I want to just be like, oh, by the way, it's a lot bigger. It's really, and it's actually really cool, and you don't have to take my word for it. So, and the only place I've learned about its coolness is in my brokenness.
Yeah.
I never learned about its coolness in my strength, pride, competency. I've only learned about its coolness in my absolute disintegration.
Yeah, see, and then that's a thing too. That's a rhetorical term that I feel like people have lost, like that God does his best work in your brokenness or whatever. Like, it's a rhetorical term that we've lost what that means because it has such a negative connotation to it. But it is true. Like, this is where we are our most surrendered and our most open to hearing Jesus and seeing and being willing to invest and move. And it's hard to do that when you're, how do you say it, putting perfume on your head and, or no, sorry, that's the opposite, but like going out and like, oh,
disfiguring yourself. Yes.
Yeah. Disfiguring yourself. And yeah. The best thing about this too is this whole series makes all this stuff, like I was saying, those connections are made. It makes everything so much clearer for me and makes Jesus make so much more sense, for lack of a better term. And I have about 200 questions just from today.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
That's exactly what, that's what Bible study should do. It shouldn't close conversations. It should open them.
Yeah. I have a ton.
You know, and you're just like, well, what's this? And how about this? And how about this?
Yep. Exactly.
So that's the greatest thing ever. So anyway, friends, thanks for tuning in. It really, I know we say it every time, and I know I say this about saying it every time, but it really is an honor. It really is, actually. And this is, I get more out of this than anybody else. It's so amazing to be in conversation with you all. So anyway, friends, Jesus is Lord. And let's hang on to that in the next week or so in the best way possible. And
manifest it.
Oh, even better. All right. Till next time, friends. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Vox Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Vox Podcast. You can also engage with the hosts on social media at facebook.com/Vox Podcast, on Instagram at Vox Podcast, and on Twitter at Mike Erie. Thank you for walking this road with us.